Well, what a start we've had behind the scenes, viewers. I'm I'm just sharing with Bill my gratitude for inspiring me about tonight's Speaking of Seeing show, which I've titled Discovery. Bill, do you want to tell me what I've been inspired by?
No, I would
Oh,
not like to tell you what you've been
oh, thank
inspired
you
by.
so much.
I've been inspired by Scottish painting, which I didn't even know existed, actually. I mean, is this like a super famous painting that I should have known?
It's very well known, certainly in Scotland, because it's become a kind of national emblem. It's on lots of merchandise. It had a massive kind of, it's almost like part of the Scottish brand, I suppose.
Did that happen recently, or is that like a long time coming?
Uh, no, I mean it's been around for a long time. Certainly in my lifetime, it's always been well known. It's this painting, which lots of people will
The
recognise. I think.
skating minister, or
Yes,
actually Reverend Robert Walker skating on the Duds Dungingston Loch.
please just
Do I have
stop.
that right?
No,
How do you spell it? How do you say it?
skating on Duddingston Loch, otherwise known as
Loch.
the skating minister.
Yeah, Henry
Um,
Raeburn.
well, there's lots of things about this. The reason why I called it Discovery is because you discovered it for yourself, which I think is a wonderful thing in art that happens anyway, regardless of whether the thing that is discovered is already well known by many other people. But there
Sure.
seems to be a particular, almost like poignancy or something about finding out for oneself after everybody else has been at that party for ages
Yeah.
that I particularly like.
This
And
this this was brought up by as a podcast episode on The Rest is History, talking about different pieces of art through history, and they had shown they did Las Meninas before this. You know, they did the what's it called at the National Gallery, the wedding. You know what I'm talking about.
no.
Oh, for God's sakes, brain not working. Convex mirror in the background,
Oh,
creepy
yeah.
looking dude.
I
What
know.
is the
Van
word I'm
Eyck.
looking for?
Yeah.
Thank you, Vinik. And then they did this, and I was like, I do not know this painting. And they were talking about it as if everyone knows this painting, and I was like, in America, this is not a famous painting.
Well,
So,
it's in the National Gallery in Edinburgh, in Scotland, obviously. And it came to prominence as a kind of Scottish symbol, part of that Scottish brand, as I said, after 1949. And the reason why that's such a significant date is that that is the point at which it was bought at auction from the family of the skating minister, Reverend Walker. So it had been in the family homes and had been inherited through several generations since this was painted round about 1795, and it was bought for £525 and bequeathed to the nation. So, or rather, it was acquired for the nation, slightly different thing. Um, the other reason why I've called it Discovery is that it's amazing what one can discover through investigation, even at surface level, into paintings, into any form of art. And this is the kind of thing that, you know, as a child, you walk past and you think, oh, there's the skating minister. And you almost don't appreciate the relevance of it in a wider context as part of this Scottish identity. Um, and I think the same as paintings like Salvador Dali's St. John on the Cross, which hung for years in the Calvin Grove
Glasgow?
Museum in Glasgow. I mean, it's back there now, but in a different position to its original location. It's the kind of thing that you visit or that you are kind of aware of, and it's just like part of your life. You don't really realize how special it is
sure.
until someone else brings it to your attention. And actually, that's kind of what happened when you mentioned it to me, because I was like, what? How could Bill not know about the skating minister?
Yeah.
So then I started looking at it again, and I thought to myself, there's so much about this painting that I think I know, but actually I didn't know.
It's so interesting at 1795. It feels so whimsical and informal somehow for a painting of that age.
Whimsical and informal. Well,
I think it's just because it's this very well-dressed man skating, ice skating, it just, and him in that position, like it feels so modern somehow. When they first said it, I just saw a little tiny version of it on my phone screen. And I was like, did he miss? Because he was like the late 18th century. I said, did they mean the late 19th century? Because it almost looks like it could have been for the late 19th century, except for the scarf around the neck, you know?
No,
So yeah, anyway.
it has this quality, I think, that makes it special. It's not a very big painting, actually, like hanging on the wall, but it has this lovely playfulness. Of course, I mean, skating is an activity. Also, I just have to mention that if you grew up in the frozen north, skating is an activity that lots of people are really familiar with. Certainly in childhood, for me, at Enoch Centre on a Saturday with all the cool boys from the schools that I didn't go to, and
Ooh.
when I was a bit younger, skating on Bingham's Pond, and it's part of, like, again, the thing that you're complacent about your past that maybe is unusual for other people.
For me, it would be walking through like forests full of fall leaves on the ground, like with all the beautiful colors and stuff. The thing is that people come to see. I grew up with that all around me all the time, so I didn't realize it until I wasn't in a place where that was happening all the time.
I mean,
Were you a good skater?
yeah, I'm quite good at skating. I'm
Okay.
quite rusty now. I mean, an ice rink comes to Bournemouth every winter, and I take my daughter and her friends sometimes. But it's not the way it used to be. It really did used to be an every Saturday kind of activity.
Are there no? There's nowhere that freezes over. So do they? Is it the plastic skating, or do they do? Because
Well,
they do that like
proper.
fake.
It's a proper ice rink.
Oh, okay. They actually turn an ice rink. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, the Reverend was actually one of the, I think he was maybe the founder, or certainly somebody very prominent in the very first figure skating club in the whole world. And kind of like a gentleman's club for ice skating. Things that I've discovered about this painting, which I think for me have been really fascinating, is that there is a dispute over the artist. Now, much like seeing the painting on the wall in the National Gallery, I have always just said Henry Raeburn, famous Scottish painter, no questions asked. But actually in 2005, this was challenged by someone studying the painting who believed it instead actually to be painted by this man, Henri-Pierre Danloux.
Okay.
So Danloux was a French emigré who was in Edinburgh, and was very used to painting the aristocracy. He'd been kind of, he'd fled from France. The French Revolution had interrupted his painting career in one way or another. And he set about painting, I think, the exiled prince or something, or someone from the aristocracy in Edinburgh who'd come from France. And from that position, he then managed to meet lots of people who were in the upper echelons of society. Now, I'm not suggesting for a minute that the minister was in the upper echelons of society as such, but he would have known a lot of people in a society setting in Edinburgh at the time. And there's a lot of kind of, I guess, maybe concern from the National Gallery of Scotland that here we have, Sir Henry Raeburn, very famous Scottish painter, has been attributed, or the painting has been attributed to him for all these many decades. It would be a real slap in the face if actually, what's his name, Dr. Stephen Lloyd, was actually right, and it was in fact painted by a Frenchman. And so what does that do for Scottish identity?
It happens all the time, right? Think of people take this stuff and there's like, actually, it was an Italian guy who did it. And you're like, oh, shoot. Would that change the way you saw it?
Not at all, actually.
Okay.
And also that's because I think when you grow up somewhere, you're aware of how the place moves and breathes, and you don't notice it anymore because you're from there. And actually, Scotland Edinburgh and also of Glasgow, where I grew up, there would be such a mix, a hybrid of people from all over in these cities. Yes, a kind of very, what I think of as like indigenous Scottish population, but always punctuated by people from other places. And so the fact that this would be painted by a Frenchman wouldn't seem incongruous actually with Scottish identity anyway.
Is it just me, or is there sort of an underpainting of a false hat below the hat? Do you see what I'm saying? It
Well,
almost looks like it was painted differently, or
this
yeah.
was part of the reason why I think the provenance was disputed, is because on both sides of the argument actually. So I think Raeburn was quite used to painting and then correcting mistakes, which is why people in the Raeburn camp, which include the National Galleries of Scotland historians, by the way, would say this is definitely a Raeburn painting because of that underpainting, because of the fact that there would be things that have been painted over several times, and they've looked at all of this on X-ray.
Sure.
Something also that would put into dispute the fact that Danloux would have painted it is apparently he was a most skilled and precise draftsman who would have been horrified at making any mistake, and so would have been much less likely to have anything that would have needed to be painted over.
Yeah. Also, the background is just so almost proto-impressionistic in this one, where the other one
Absolutely.
is so complicated. Yeah.
It is, but I think one of the reasons why it had been contested was to do with the posture of the figure. And I chose this painting not because I know it, it's also one of the paintings owned by National Gallery Scotland. It's because of that funny movement with the leg. And apparently Danloux was quite widely known for painting the aristocracy, yes, but also painting soldiers on the run.
Okay.
So the fact that we've got the skating minister with his leg out at the back, I think people seem to think that that might align it with Danloux.
Yeah, I think that is by far the most exciting pose you're going to get somebody who's ice skating. So that's probably where they ended up with that.
Well, I mean, this apparently, I mean, I don't particularly think so, but apparently this would be noted as being quite a tricky movement for a man skating on a loch.
Okay.
Anyway,
Do those lochs freeze over that often? I feel like they're really large bodies of water. I just can't imagine that they freeze over very easily.
right, you're thinking about the lochs like, Loch Ness, which is vast.
Yeah,
So
those are huge, right? Yeah.
it isn't a closed loch, it's a sea loch. But a loch just means any body of water. So
Oh, okay. So this
sure.
could be just a little lake or a pond or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know Duddingston Loch, but I'm going to assume it would be relatively small. Scotland does get bitterly cold in the winter, and
Yeah.
it would have been something that wouldn't be unusual to see frozen water in bleak midwinter. And it is quite a bleak painting. This is the other thing I have come to as a discovery again, or a rediscovery of this painting, is that I sort of forget the bleakness in the background. And I love how that contrasts with the skater and with that funny expression on his face, that there's something so concentrated in his forward motion and also his face. His face is part of him propelling himself through that space somehow.
Yeah.
On the National Gallery's blurb, because I was looking at it yesterday, it described the painting as dynamic and serene. And I agree, there is a kind of serenity to this, but there is absolutely playfulness.
Yeah. And he does feel almost superimposed on the background, but not, I don't mean that in like a technically poor way. It just, he really just pops out from what is otherwise just a setting to place him into, I kind of like it about it. There's something, that's another part of the modern feel of it to me.
Well, I mean, to me, it's not sort of, people will balk at this when they're art historians, but to me, there doesn't seem to be such a massive movement between this and something like Whistler's Mother.
Sure. Yep.
and that's like,
What year was that?
I think it was, well, I'm just looking actually because I can't remember. I don't want to get it wrong.
It's funny, the last time we were, because that's normally at the National
71.
Gallery, is it somewhere or somewhere? Where is that usually? Spain? It's somewhere over there because we went to a museum where it was supposed to be and it wasn't. It was actually in Philadelphia, and we came back from wherever we were to go to Philadelphia to go see it while it was there.
Well, the first time I ever saw Whistler's Mother was actually in Glasgow. And
Okay.
Antiquarian Museum in Glasgow had a Whistler exhibition. My mum took me to see it when I was quite young. And I saw it and I thought to myself at the time that it was very beautiful. And I think my mum was surprised that I thought that because, it is in so many ways dull.
Yeah, but there's something similar to this, though, as you're saying. There's something sort of intricate and delicate about it. Like it's detailed and delicate, yet it's hard to explain. It doesn't feel like it could cut you, but it feels like there's sharp things in it. You know?
I do wonder with this though, I mean, is it also twee?
Maybe. What year was Whistler's Mother? What did you say? Did you look it up?
1871.
Right. So I mean, this is almost 80 years later. That's crazy.
But in terms of discovery, I mean, here I am again. I will have passed by a Danloux painting or two in the National Gallery, I'm sure of it.
Sure.
I have never noticed Danloux's painting before. So I do feel grateful, Bill, that you mentioned to me about the skating minister because what it's done is it's opened up another channel that I didn't know was there. That sounds incredibly conceited. Makes me sound like I must think myself capable of knowing everything there is to know about art history. Of course I don't. But I am complacent about what I already know.
Sure.
And it's actually quite lovely to revisit things. And I think perhaps if I could give us both a homework, it would be for us to go and rediscover something that we think we know really well in art history,
Okay.
and find out for ourselves new things and then reconvene in a couple of weeks' time to share them.
Sure.
And partly that is because I've enjoyed enormously reviewing The Skating Minister, finding out about Henri-Pierre Danloux, thinking about the kind of challenges of provenance in paintings that haven't been signed, which The Skating Minister I don't think is. But it's also really to say to myself, even when I think I know something, I can always know more. That makes it sound horribly acquisitional. I just mean the joy
It's
of it.
funny when I first mentioned it to you, I was expecting you to write me back and say, "What? You don't know the skating minister?" Like, just I thought you would be. I guess you were a little surprised by it, but I thought you'd be exasperated with me for not knowing that.
No, but then it does call into question again this idea that we become so inured or so blind to what we've seen.
Sure. I mean, there's a guy I used to listen to podcasts and he used to say, every year every day there's people born who have never seen the Flintstones. Like, I mean, but it's true of everything, right? It may be that there's people your daughter's age who have never listened to the Beatles, and that goes all the way back to apparently the skating minister, which I feel relatively versed in most popular Western art of the last 500 years, or at least know the big, stakes in the ground, but I had never seen it before. So it's kind of interesting.
I mean, it's the kind of thing that I suppose enthusiasts, particularly of Raeburn's work, would go, kind of like a pilgrimage, really, to go and see it hanging on the wall.
Do his other paintings look like this? Are they similar, or
There's a
is
lot
this an odd one out?
it's a lot of portraits,
Okay.
obviously, especially for this time. But you would find, I'm not sure, I have to be careful because the Edinburgh galleries have changed since I've been there last, which I was actually trying to work out. I think I've not been to a gallery in Edinburgh probably for 20 years, 15 years, certainly not since I've had Imogen. I've not been in an Edinburgh gallery. The two things.
Not since you last bought a laptop.
Yes. I mean, Raeburn is a skilled painter, but then you're taught that this artist is a skilled painter because you're Scottish.
Yeah.
Although, it was painting at a really interesting time. Even if the paintings themselves don't light me up with a particular fervour, that it's unavoidable that he was... actually, by the way, if this was painted by Raeburn, it's likely it was painted by Raeburn because these two were great friends. They knew each other extremely well, Raeburn and the minister.
Well, that makes
Walker.
a lot of sense then. There's a lot of... I think that the pose thing is not enough for me to suck me over to the other side. I need more information.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, and I've not done enough research on it since we were speaking about this initially. I could find out a lot more, I suppose, about Danloux, and I could look for myself. But I think the compelling parts of this are the more kind of the word of mouth testimony, even of Raeburn's, Walker's granddaughter, great granddaughter, who was the person who eventually sold the painting. That it had been painted by Henry Raeburn of her great great grandfather, and it had hung in the family home for all those years. And word of
It'd be a pretty cool painting of your great great grandfather, wouldn't it? To have that.
Oh, I would love to have a painting of my grandpa like this.
Yeah, exactly.
I was thinking though, in terms of like an equivalency for you, what would be an equivalent painting that is about the brand of your American? I don't know. Is that too broad or?
Well, the problem is America is it's a much bigger place. You know what I'm saying? It's harder to pin it down. I mean, if you're talking 19th century, because a lot of 18th century stuff was still basically revolutionary or British stuff that was coming over. I mean, it might be something like Madame X or something like that. That feels very sort of, even though I think it was painted in Paris, still by an American painter. I don't know. I have to think about that one. That's a good question.
I mean, to me,
I would use, there's a famous painting of George Washington and his army crossing the Delaware. That's at the Met. It's huge. It's, it's 30 feet across and 20 feet tall. And that is like sort of an icon of American history. And therefore it kind of has, but it was, made in 1870 or something like that. I have to look up the date. So, but it's, you look at that kind of stuff, and I think that's what most people would have a hard time disconnecting American history from Americanism. Can
you just go into that for a minute? What do you mean?
I think that our country is young enough that the sort of the feeling that is American is still tied to very specific things, is tied to wars and the frontier and all that kind of thing.
But you don't think that happens in countries like Scotland?
I think it does, but I think Scotland has had, thousands of years to define itself as Scottish, despite all of those other things. There's like a deeper feeling of that's the problem with America, is like it's such a young country that I think it's still like a teenager in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Let me think about that one. You put me on the spot, but I'll come up with a better answer for next time.
Anyway, we are going to rediscover, Bill, you and I, something that we think we already know a lot about. I was so surprised at how much information was so readily available to me when I started looking into this. And again, that notion that one might pass by a painting in a gallery many times in one's lifetime. It might be rooted into or hardwired into the memory channel of childhood, as this is, or, we've talked before about things like the Dali painting that was at Kelvin Grove. Honestly, I'm so guilty of forgetting the paintings I remember the best. And
Sure.
I feel like
You take them for granted.
I don't want to do that anymore.
Yep. Yep. I agree.
Anyway,
Very cool.
TikTok, off you go. Do your
All right.
homework.
I'm going to go to the Met.
Gather your sources.
Yeah.
Bye,
Talk to
Bill.
some curators. Bye.